911, what's your emergency?
Oh my God, bees.
You said bees?
ABC Thursdays, 911 is all you.
That truck was hauling 22 million killer bees.
With the 3-part season premiere of that.
That's enough bees to kill
44,000 people.
Is that some bee-nado?
This one's gonna sting.
Help is coming!
911, all new Thursdays, 8/7 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Welcome back to I Want That Too, the podcast where Disney merch meets Disney history. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and as always, I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Lauren Hersey.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, Lauren.
All right. Well, I am pumped for today's episode, and it's one that I have especially been looking forward to. So we are keeping the Halloween spirit alive with none other than Hocus Pocus.
Mm-hmm. Now, before we get to the nitty-gritty, want to mention that if you listen to Fine Tuning, the podcast I do with Drew Taylor, we recently talked about how American Tail, the animated film, led indirectly to Disney's Hocus Pocus. So if you're a fan of animation and movies, I highly recommend you check out that podcast as well. Okay, and I apologize for the shameless plug.
It's totally fine, Jim. Plug away. We're all one Jim Hill Media family, so go for it.
Okay.
But I do know that you have been really jazzed about Hocus Pocus lately, not only because it's Halloween, but because you've mentioned that you're reading Witches Run Amok, Shannon Carlin's oral history of the making of Hocus Pocus. And I know you have some really incredible stories to share with us today, and I can't wait to hear them all.
Absolutely, but one of those stories will have to wait till later in the episode because right now we need to thank our sponsor. And as always, today's episode is brought to you by touringplans.com. If you're planning a trip to Disney or Universal, let Touring Plans help you skip the lines and make the most of your experience. Be sure to check them out at touringplans.com for personalized planning tools and crowd insights. Save time and save money with Touring Plans.
I highly recommend them. Do it up.
Yep.
We love touring plans. All right. So, speaking of Hocus Pocus, I have to ask if you saw that it's coming back to theaters. Eric mentioned that he thought that you had mentioned that.
I want to say yes, but I mentioned, I think, as part of, isn't it also coming back to theater? I mean, I think Disney's opening Hocus Pocus one weekend, and then, what is it, Nightmare is either the weekend before? Hocus Pocus coming back to theaters just in time for Halloween, October 18th. Tickets are already available online through major ticketing platforms. So if you're itching to catch it on a big screen as opposed to 1,200 times over on Freeform, this will be your chance. Interested parties can head to Fandango, AMC, your local theater website. Super limited run though. I think it's just 1 week. But
I think is it one day? Isn't it October 18th, or am I wrong?
It just 1 day?
I thought it was 1 day.
Wow.
I could be totally wrong, but like, I don't know. I know you've mentioned before they didn't, hit a home run out the park, and Disney knows how to squeeze every single last penny out of their successful IP. So I'm going to be anxious to see how this 1 day or 1 week goes.
Well, again, what's kind of intriguing about the Hocus Pocus story, as you mentioned, when it came out in 1993, it didn't do great at the box office. In fact, it bombed. But here's the thing. They put it out in theaters in July. And again, we were just talking briefly about Nightmare Before Christmas. And Disney went from having never produced a Halloween-themed movie to suddenly in 1993, they had two. And
that's wild.
Yeah, and it was one of these things where the thinking was, well, look, Nightmare is really a Halloween meets Christmas movie, so that really probably should be the one that opens around the actual Halloween, because it will then continue to play into the holidays. And the thinking was, well, if we open Hocus Pocus in July and it does well, it will still be in theaters by the time Halloween rolls around. But nobody anticipated that earlier that same summer that Steven Spielberg's very first Jurassic Park movie would open and then blot out the sun. I mean, that came out June 11th, 1993. I want to say that's 5 weeks before Hocus Pocus opened.
I mean, are we going with the theory that dinosaurs eat witches if witches eat children? I'm just saying.
Well, that's I don't want to think about what they taste like. Okay, but yeah, the Hocus Pocus. In fact, what was interesting is, much like Deadpool versus Wolverine this past summer, where that movie wasn't that number one at the box office for like 5 weeks, 6 weeks,
forever.
Yeah. And
in modern movie times.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened in the summer of 1993 with Jurassic Park, which was why when Hocus Pocus finally opened in theaters, I want to say on its opening weekend, with Bette Midler as its star, it was 2 or 3 at the box office. I mean, because Jurassic Park was still out there. Right. But anyway, just to put it into focus here, much like the Wizard of Oz, which people forget today when it came out in 1939, it did okay at the box office. I mean, it covered its production costs, but that was that. It wasn't till it began running on television annually, it became the pop culture phenomena that we know today. And much the same way, Hocus Pocus really didn't find its footing till much later. In fact, we were just talking about Freeform, but it was actually, I want to say it began running on ABC Family as what they first advertised as, 13 Days of Halloween, which then expanded to 31 Days of Halloween. And that, then suddenly Hocus Pocus, which got aired repeatedly during that programming event, became this beloved thing, which of course led to the Hocus Pocus 2 we saw in 2022, and the franchise keeps growing.
I know. And remember, Bette Midler said, she's getting old. If they want to do another one, they better get on it.
There we go.
Disney.
There we go. So,
but I mean, I love Hocus Pocus so much, and we just watched it. We actually just watched the first and the second one, and I'm not alone. I mean, people love themselves some Hocus Pocus, and it's obvious even when you are going out and you're shopping, there is so much Hocus Pocus merch. It's unbelievable. And I actually just got in the mail, I was telling Jim before we started that we're going to Hershey Park this weekend coming up for their Halloween festivities, and that's what I bought Lainey, was a Sanderson Sisters Hocus Pocus shirt. So, and I think I mentioned, maybe in our last show, that Target had a ton of Hocus Pocus shirts, but there are entire collections popping up everywhere. And I mean, Amazon, anything that you can imagine, they have it. And so when I was starting to think about the outline for our show today and things that we wanted to cover, I swear, just thinking about it, Facebook knows. Not only is it listening when you're talking, I swear it's in our heads. I don't know, just teasing. But yeah, so I immediately get served 2 back-to-back Hocus Pocus ads. The first was for the Monster High Hocus Pocus dolls. Fun fact, Alice is now older. She's closer to my age, but do you know what Monster High is?
Oh, okay. I've heard of this, and I want to say this remind me of Bratz, but okay. Explain. What is Monster High?
Okay, yeah, you're not not wrong. You're in the family of the
Okay.
Bratz dolls. And honestly, Monster High, I think, was so popular that Disney tried to kind of come up with their own variation because they had like an in-park line. But anyways, besides back to the point is Monster High is a super popular doll line. It is from Mattel, and it came out years ago, and you could think of the dolls like the gothic version of Barbie, and like the Bratz dolls, they have like those bigger rounder heads, but these dolls are based on classic monsters like vampires, werewolves, Frankenstein, like you name it. And now Monsters High has started doing these like limited edition collaborations like the Hocus Pocus dolls, and I'm thinking they're targeting me like clearly for a reason. But so with this set, you get all three of the Sanderson sisters. And I mean, their attention to detail, like you just got to Google the dolls. It's wild.
Okay.
And they're limited edition, so they may be a collectible at some point. But if you are interested in these dolls, they don't come out until October 4th. And from my understanding, they are going to be available in, small quantities on Amazon, Walmart, Mattel, and they are $125
Eat?
for the set.
Okay, no. That's actually reasonable for 3 dolls, especially collectible dolls. But again, okay, limited edition. And so again, if you're into this sort of thing, or you're a Sanderson Sisters enthusiast, mark your calendar for October 4th.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. So moving on to my second Facebook ad that was targeting me as they were in my head. So the next one up actually came from the Disney store, but this time it was for Halloween costumes. And they had the cute little Sanderson sisters on the front, all dressed up. So then I had to go look and see what they had just for funsies, even though, like I had mentioned last week, that Miles is going to be E.T., which, by the way, I am crushing. I am going to have to show you the epic E.T. hat that I bought from Universal Studios and may or may not have paid like $40 or $50 for. But it's going to bring it all together. It's going to be great. Okay. So back to Disney and their costumes. I don't know. Like, I feel like they've like taken it up a notch for like kids and adults. And so I think that like Halloween costumes, like the really popular ones every year, are tied to Hollywood. And Google Trends search data is already giving us a really good idea what the most popular costumes are going to be for this year. So from what I can find so far, like think, Deadpool and Wolverine. Makes sense. Right? Makes sense. The characters from Inside Out 2 are kind of everything, to be honest with you. The anxiety costume for adults, like it also feels oddly perfect for this time.
Wow.
Yeah, even though she's like the bad guy, kind of.
Yeah. Well, remember in the first Inside Out movie, Joy was actually kind of the bad guy.
Right? So maybe she'll like have a story arc in the next one.
Okay.
Okay, so of course we have the Sanderson sisters. We have some new costumes from the Descendants, Rise of Red. And another one that didn't do great but kind of made a comeback. We have, I believe it's Ember from Elemental.
Yeah.
I had no idea that they would be getting costumes.
Well, just circling back to the Sanderson sisters, sometimes you have to soak for a while before you break through. But again, it's always fun to see what's trending. I mean, I feel like every year there's at least one pop culture couple that shows up at every Halloween party. What do you think? Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift this time around? Are they going to be the one everyone's going to do?
Oh my gosh, it's not even a question. Yes, absolutely yes. And we're going to see all the arrows of Taylor Swift if I had to take a guess. And I mean, like, technically, like, Travis and Taylor, that's kind of Disney. I mean, the Eras Tour was on Disney Plus, right? And
True.
so, but if you are curious about what's trending, you really need to check out. I had no idea this existed, by the way. It's called Google's Frightgeist. And it is powered by Google Trends, and it is a very cool tool that tracks the most popular Halloween costumes across the country based on what people are searching for. Like, you can even see what costumes are popular in your local area, like right now, like what people are searching for. It's insane. Like right now, Beetlejuice is up there. Wednesday Addams, Deadpool and Wolverine. There were so many places. Barbie was the top, which, it kind of makes sense. But the coolest thing that I had to tell you was that Monsters, Inc. even made the list at number 34 in the nation. Like, how fun is that?
Well, I wonder on the heels of that if there's going to be an influx of Mike and Sully costumes this year. I guess we shall see.
I guess. And I think we have a lot to look forward to. But, speaking of, Halloween and Halloween movies, stay tuned because after the break, Jim has got a fantastic feature lined up for us. He is diving into some of the behind the scenes stories from Hocus Pocus, straight from Shannon Carlin's book, Witches Run Amok. And there are some really fun details in there that even the biggest Hocus Pocus fans might not know about, so don't go anywhere.
This episode is supported by FX's Grotesquerie, a new series from executive producer Ryan Murphy. Heinous crimes unsettle a small community, and the local detective feels these atrocities are eerily personal, as if someone or something is taunting her. Starring Niecy Nash-Betts, Courtney B. Vance, Leslie Manville, and Travis Kelce. FX's Grotesquerie. All new Wednesdays on FX. Stream on Hulu.
Dealing with mental health can be hard, but United Healthcare can help make getting care easier. With Mental Health Complete Plus, provided by Teladoc Health. Unlimited virtual sessions for only $59.99 a month. Visit mentalhealthcomplete.com to learn more.
In this ad for the Mobile One brand, I have 30 seconds to talk about driving, which might be what you're doing right now. Maybe you're in the car, you're free, you're in control, on an open road with an open calendar. Your mind is wandering, and you're going with it. Or maybe you're stuck at work, in meetings, or emails, or worse, meetings about emails. And if that's the case, there's only one question. Why? Mobile One, for the love of driving. Visit loveofdriving.us/radio to learn more.
And we're back. Now, as Lauren mentioned on the outro of the last segment, we're talking on here, going to be sharing some stories from Witches Run Amok, Shannon Carlin's terrific oral history of Disney's Hocus Pocus, and a lot of the info I'm pulling here today will be direct quotes from this 304-page book, which Hyperion Avenue published back on August 31st of this year, 2024.
All right, so where's the story begin? Where were we starting?
Okay, it's 1991, and Bette Midler's previously stellar career in film has had kind of a rough patch. Her most recent movie, something called Scenes from a Mall, which Touchstone Pictures released to theaters on February 22nd of, again, that same year, 1991, has gotten mostly negative reviews and did middling at the box office.
Well, look, they can't all be hits, right? Every actor and actress, they all have a flop every now and again.
Yeah, but here's the thing. There was also For the Boys, which is this big budget musical comedy drama that Bette and James Caan have done for 20th Century Fox. And so because it's still the early fall of 1991, this period piece has yet to officially be released to theaters, but the studio is already doing test screenings around the country for the Boys, and the advance word, Lauren, to be honest, isn't great.
Oh no! So are you saying Bette has 2 strikes against her?
Yeah, and then there was Sister Act.
Okay, but I'm going to stop you there. Bette Midler did not star in Sister Act. Wasn't that Whoopi?
Yeah, but here's the problem. Disney had originally created Sister Act for Bette Midler, only to then have her turn the project down.
Why would she do that?
Well, okay, largely because the character Bette was supposed to play in Sister Act, which is this lounge singer from Reno who witnesses a mob hit and then gets stashed by the FBI in a convent, and then has to dress as a nun. It just seemed to Bette like, well, this is the sort of project that Bette Midler would predictably make for Disney.
And let me guess then. So Bette didn't like to be thought of as predictable. She needed to be a little extra.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And where this gets interesting is after Bette officially turns down Sister Act, as you mentioned, Disney takes this crime comedy to Whoopi. And Ms. Goldberg is happy to make this movie for the mouse.
And then Sister Act eventually became a giant hit for Disney, right?
It did. But it wouldn't be released to theaters till May of 1992. But again, in today's story, we're in the fall of 1991. That's still a few months off, but filming is already underway on Sister Act. And based on the footage that Disney executives are already seeing, they know that audiences are just going to eat this movie up.
All right, so now I'm really starting to feel kind of bad for Bette, like turning down a huge hit like that after two kind of low blows.
Okay, but don't feel too bad for the Divine Miss M. But prior to this rough patch, she'd starred in 5 big hits for Touchstone.
And Touchstone Pictures, for those of you who don't remember, that used to be Disney's adult distribution arm, and a part of that company made R and PG rated comedies and dramas.
Right.
But refresh my memory here. What were those 5 films that Bette made at Touchstone?
They were, Down and Out in Beverly Hills, released at theaters in January 1986. Then there was Ruthless People, which, again, released in June of the same year. So it was bang, bang, 2 hits back to back. Then there was Outrageous Fortune, which he did with Shelley Long for Disney. That was January of 87. Then there was Big Business, where Bette partnered with Lily Tomlin. That was June of 1998. And then there was Beaches, December of 1988. But that also gave her a hit song, Wind Beneath Your Wings.
Oh, I know Beaches.
Yep.
But all those movies then, I mean, they all made big money for the mouse.
They did. Which is why, in spite of what happened with Scenes from the Mall and what was about to happen with For the Boys, Disney was still solidly in Bette Midler's corner.
Okay, that said, though, it was time for a change, right?
Well, yeah, you and Jeffrey Katzenberg, the then head of Walt Disney Studios, think very much alike, Lauren. You know, you maybe go manage a studio.
I don't know if I want to be compared to Jeffrey. Sorry.
Okay, all right. Well, anyway, Jeffrey, again, around the same time, fall of 91, goes to Bette and says, let's try something different.
Which I assume is when he offered her Hocus Pocus.
Well,
am I on the right track?
You are, but here's the thing. It's been 6 years since Disney first acquired the screen rights to Halloween House, which is the short story that David Kirshner first wrote for Muppet Magazine.
And didn't David adapt his own short story into like a screenplay? I feel like I remember reading that somewhere, or like maybe you told me. We talk a lot.
Well, also, that was the story on the fine-tuning thing that we did. That's where you heard it.
That too, yeah.
Okay, all right. Anyway, so it's true, Mr. Kirshner had turned Halloween House into a film script, but at this point in the project's history, Lauren, a number of different writers have made a run at writing this screenplay, and the studio had a bunch of different drafts. And at this point, now it's called Hocus Pocus, but none of these versions of the script is exactly what Disney wants.
Okay, well, what did they have in mind?
Well, they wanted a family-friendly comedy that centered around Halloween that would then play to both adults and kids. And anyway, what Jeffrey basically tells Bette is like, look, you've made all these movies for Touchstone, but I think it's time that you would finally appear in something for Walt Disney Pictures.
Okay, but like, Didn't Bette Midler voice a character in the animated film for Disney back in like the 80s? Like Oliver and Company, ring
There
a
you go.
bell?
See, this is how I know you have 3 small children. Or they used to be small. That's again.
Lainey was a huge Oliver and Company fan. Huge.
There we go. So she knows Georgette, the pampered poodle. You know, that's okay. Then no. All right. But anyway, you're right. She did that. But the point that Katzenberg was trying to make that was Bette would finally appear on camera in a Disney movie. And more to the point, Bette would finally have a movie that she could show to her daughter, Sophie.
Okay, well, how old was Sophie around this time?
Well, Sophie had been born November of 86, so she would have been 5.
Okay, I mean, like, I get that. That's about the age when kids, like, start watching Disney movies.
And
So
watching
it'd
and
have
watching
been
and watching and watching.
over and
Yeah.
over and over again.
Yep.
So I think that's a smart play on Jeffrey's part. So maybe I'll renege on my comment. But pitching Hocus Pocus as some sort of movie that Bette could eventually show her daughter. I love that.
Oh, yeah, but here's the thing. The script that Katzenberg shows Midler, it's rough. I mean, it still has the basic plot elements from the film that we know today. By that, I mean, Hocus Pocus is supposed to be about this trio of witches who are sisters from the 1600s who return to life in modern-day Salem and then have to do battle with a band of plucky teenagers on Halloween night.
Okay, well, I mean, it sounds familiar. So, like, how rough could the script have been?
Well, okay. So this early version of the script really leans into some of the scarier aspects of the story rather than the comic.
Oh, I'm sure Disney didn't like that. So, like, what were some of the things that were included?
Okay. Do you remember Jay and Ice?
Weren't they like the high school bullies in the first Hocus Pocus?
There we go. Okay. And you remember the scene late in the movie where they're in the Sanderson Sisters' house and they were in those cages hanging down from the ceiling?
I do remember that.
Okay, so, and that's the last time we see them in the movie that was released to theaters. You know, Jay and Ice are still alive. Okay, however, in the early script for this film,
Oh, no.
what we see are the Sanderson sisters as they get ready for their fly out over Salem. We see them sucking all but the last little bits of life out of Jay and Ice. So in the script, it describes these 2 old men inside of these cages dangling, and it's just sort of like, eh. Yeah.
I don't think that would have gone over well for Disney.
Yeah, that
Kind of reminds me like Roger Rabbit when the guy melts.
but again, you're not wrong. You know
That was pretty terrifying.
That was pretty
watching
good.
that.
Okay. Well, anyway, back to Katzenberg. He tells me to look, we want you as Winifred Sanderson. And don't worry about what the script says right now. We're going to tailor this material so it plays to all your strengths.
All right, cutting to the chase here. Given that Miss Midler has now made 2 Hocus Pocus movies and is trying to talk Disney into making a third, it's obvious that she said yes to Jeffrey's offer.
Yeah, but Midler did go into this project with a few conditions. One of them was that All Girls Productions, the production company that Bette ran with Bonnie Bruckheimer, that her company would have a hand in Hocus Pocus. More to the point that Midler had some very specific ideas about how Winifred Sanderson should look. And again, so Bruckheimer was interviewed for Witches Run Amok, and as she remembered it, Bette usually didn't like to look unattractive in a movie. Whenever possible, she wanted to look, she'd look beautiful in her previous pictures, but Bette is also a comedian, and in Hocus Pocus, she wanted to be really funny in the role of Winifred Sanderson, all out funny. So she had this vision in her head about how this character was supposed to look in this movie, and Bette was determined to do whatever it took to achieve that look.
All right. Well, so tell us about Bette's vision for Winifred's Sanderson.
Well, all right. For starters, Bette was determined that the Sanderson sisters weren't going to look like cliched witches. Dress all in black and have the pointy hat.
All right, so that's going to require some cooperation of whoever Disney has hired to do the costumes for this movie.
Yeah, and that would have been a Mary Voigt, who'd previously worked with Tim Burton on costumes for Batman Returns. Anyway, Bette reportedly tells Mary that she wants her to look at Lady Tremaine, Cinderella's cruel stepmother, as well and also Anastasia and Drizella, Cinderella's mean stepsisters, for inspiration, because they were classic Disney villains that still wore beautiful, colorful clothes.
Okay, I could totally see that in the finished film. Okay, but what about her hair and makeup? Like, was it based on them too?
Well, no, that in fact, what's interesting there, Midler, in fact, out ahead of the release of Hocus Pocus 2, did an interview with Vogue where she looked back at production of the original film, and Midler revealed that for that one, I told Disney's hair and makeup people that I wanted to look like the Red Queen from Alice in Wonderland. I wanted the hair to be a certain shape, almost heart shape, and I wanted no eyebrows, and for the character's lipstick, just these two little specks and a little bit of blush on her cheeks. And Midler said, look, I actually designed that makeup myself, and I was very, very proud of it.
All right. So now let's talk about the aspect of Winifred Sanderson's signature look that really sticks out, which are her teeth. I was going to say pearly whites, but maybe not so pearly or white.
No.
What's the deal with those?
Okay, so Kevin Haney, the lead makeup artist on Hocus Pocus, he recounts in Witches Run Amok that Midler had something very specific in mind when it came to her character's choppers. That's like, Bette didn't want buck teeth. The concept here was that Winifred had teeth that kind of looked like a rat or a rodent, and the teeth had to have just the right amount of bizarreness to change the way that this character looked. And so Bette handed me a cast of her teeth that a dentist had done, and I got to work immediately on the appliance.
My gosh, so that was a very deliberate choice to have teeth that looked like a rodent. Like, I could see that, though.
Well, but I have to tell you, Lauren, there were people at Disney Studios who were really, really concerned about the specific look that Bette wanted for Winifred Sanderson, which, again, is something that's obviously villainous, but at the same time would then lend itself to broad comedy. So, again, Mary Voigt, who did the costumes in the movie, talked about how important it was that all of the pieces that made Winifred Sanderson's signature look, that they had to come together. They had to work as this complete unit, and her dress, her wig, her makeup, and the big teeth. Before Bette put it all on, I thought, well, this is either going to look really great or it's going to be a huge embarrassment for us all. So,
but it worked. I mean, like, her look worked, like, right from the beginning, right?
Well, Kenny Ortega, the director of the original Hocus Pocus, was in the room when Midler first tried on the entire outfit. And as he recounted in Witches Run Amok, when Bette first turned around and looked at me as Winifred, I was just overwhelmed with joy and excitement.
All right, well, check one off for Bette, so Ortega's on board with the idea. But didn't you just say that there were people at Disney who didn't like the look that Midler had come up with for Winifred Sanderson?
Oh, yes. Okay. During the first week of production of Hocus Pocus, Pamela Alch, who was the film's script supervisor, remembered that I was sitting with Kenny in his trailer when somebody senior at Disney, and it's kind of inferred in the book that it's Jeffrey, all right, that he comes down and he gets into Kenny's trailer, and it's like, it says to him, look, you gotta get her to not use those teeth. We want people to know it's Bette Midler.
Wait a minute. So I've heard the story before, only in this version. It was that Disney executives, we're going to air quote executives, fighting with Johnny Depp over the look that he'd come up with for Captain Jack Sparrow.
Again, Lauren, you're not wrong. For the exact same thing did happen on the set of Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl. Johnny showed up in October of 2002 when they were starting production on that Gore Verbinski movie with a number of his front teeth encased in gold caps. And the whole first week of shooting, Disney executives are telling Verbinski that he has to tell Depp that he's got to get rid of those gold caps.
But he didn't, though. I mean, he clearly kept them, and I'm assuming that Bette Midler kept her rodent teeth.
Oh, yeah. Again, back to Pamela Elch, the script supervisor, looking back on the production, said, there was a lot of back and forth during the first week of filming on Hocus Pocus, and senior executives at Disney did not want Bette to wear those teeth, but Bette was adamant that she was keeping them. She felt that they were part of the character, and without those teeth, she was just Bette Midler, and she wanted to be in this movie Winifred Sanderson.
Okay, but I'm curious though, because I mean, we have all seen the finished film. So, like, we know she won. What happened?
Well, mind you, this is after Disney tried to strong-arm Ortega into reshooting all of the footage that had been shot for Hocus Pocus in its first week of production. This time, again, without Bette wearing the rat teeth.
Yeah, but this would be a lot of money, right? To reshoot all that footage.
There we go. In fact, the entire budget for Hocus Pocus was $28 million, which I know doesn't sound like a lot of money when you compare to what studios spend today. But again, remember, this is 1992, 1993. And to be honest, $28 million was actually a lot of money back then. In fact, Hocus Pocus was the highest costing family comedy that Disney had produced to date.
Okay, so that's interesting. But again, looking at the finished version of Hocus Pocus, it's clear that the studio executives at Disney eventually capitulated. No, they lost and Bette got to keep her teeth.
Well, okay, those studio executives, as you mentioned, may have lost, but Disney's marketing department did not. And I'm now, look at this, I'm holding up a copy of Shannon Carlin's Witches Run Amok, and on the cover of this oral history, the folks from Hyperion Avenue have placed a copy of the poster that the marketing team created to promote this Bette Midler movie. So what do you see, Lauren?
All right. Well, Bette Midler is in the middle of the image, and she's got her sisters next to her, and these three are dressed as the Sanderson Sisters, and they're all looking very witchy as magical lightning bolts shoot out of Bette's fingers.
Okay, but look closely at Miss Midler's face. What do you notice there?
All right. Well, her lips are pursed and her mouth's closed. You really can't see Bette's teeth at all. This is really the image that Disney used to sell Hocus Pocus when the film was released in 93?
Yep. And rule number one in Hollywood, don't mess with the marketing department. So, anyway, like I said, most of the stories shared today were pulled directly out of that wonderful book, Witches Run Amok, written by Shannon Carlin. Terrific oral history of Hocus Pocus. Highly recommended, folks. Got all sorts of great behind-the-scenes stories about the making of this pulp culture classic. And maybe we'll share another one or two as we get closer to October 31st here on I Want That Too.
Well, I would like that very much, but I do think it is about time that we close up shop just for now. But before we go, I do want to let everyone know what's coming up on our next episode of I Want That Too. We are taking a dark turn, and we're going to be diving into all things Disney villains, from, classic bad guys that we love to hate and the new villains that are making their way into the parks and merch. I think it's also going to be a very fun episode. And of course, if you want to stay up to date with everything happening on the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, make sure that you are following along on Facebook and Instagram and on X with Jim. Jim is posting updates all the time from all the shows, so do that and you won't miss a thing.
Oh, too nice to see that. And don't forget, if you've got questions and suggestions for future episodes of I Want That Too, we would love to hear from you. So please reach out to myself and Lauren on social media. You can find me at jim@jimhillmedia.com. And you, Lauren, where can the nice folks find you?
Lauren at laurenhersey.com. We are both super original with our email addresses.
There you go.
Yeah, tell us, are you going to go to the theaters to see Hocus Pocus? What do you think? One day, 1 week? I don't know. But again, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time on I Want That Too.